this session is going to be a real interesting session for all of us. And I'm going to introduce our guests today, invite them over to the stage, and then we'll get the conversation going. Is that okay? All right? Okay. So the very first guest I have is Harmeen. Harmeen Mehta is Chief Information Officer, CIO of Airtel. Bharti Airtel Limited is the legal name. As CIO, she is responsible for the overall strategy and IT function of the entire group. Harmeen brings with her over 17 years of global experience in technology, having led large technology and application engineering organizations such as BBVA. BBVA is the second largest bank in Spain, where she spent a couple of years. Bank of America Merrill Lynch, where she spent 3 years. HSBC, 8 years. And as a part of NIIT, she spent time with British Airways and Qantas in consulting capacity. As you can see from her organizations that she has added value to, she's worked globally across locations such as Hong Kong, Germany, Australia, London, Spain, and of course, now she's here in India. During her career, Harmeen has held various leadership positions, including Global Head of Corporate Investment and Private Banking at HSBC, MD at Merrill Lynch India Technology Services, where she led the bank's captive technology centers in India, Singapore, Ireland, and Canada, and later as a CIO of Asia for global market and research technology at Bank of America. In her last stint as BBVA, Harmeen was the CIO for global markets and risk and operations for corporate and investment banking, and led large-scale business and IT transformation programs across Europe, US, and Latin America. Harmeen holds engineering degree in computer science from Punjab University. Friends, let's put our hands together and welcome Harmeen. Harmeen, may I invite you to the stage, please? Our next guest is Anil Jagia. He's the CIO of HDFC Bank. Anil has done his engineering from IIT Kanpur, I'm sorry. Thereafter, he received a management degree from IIM Ahmedabad. He's a senior banker with over 20 years of experience in banking across the world. Started his career in India with Citibank, and then moved to Singapore and US for several years. At Citibank, he held various senior management positions. He returned to India to take up the post of Chief Operating Officer of Centurion Bank Limited in the year 2004. He's currently head Information Technology, Legal, Secretarial, QIG, Administration, Infrastructure, Sustainable Livelihood Initiative, and Financial Inclusion at HDFC Bank. That's a mouthful of responsibilities that Anil is handling at HDFC Bank. As you can see here, both Anil and Anil, I'd like to invite you to stage as well. Please put your hands together for Anil. As we can see, can you hear me? We have really giants from very, very large corporations, right? These are the kind of companies we as enterprise salespeople want to sell to, right? How many of you don't want to sell to a company like Airtel or to HDFC Bank? Don't want to sell to. So everybody wants to sell. Great. So, as enterprise companies, enterprise product startups, we have a lot of challenges penetrating these large corporations. And we thought this session would be a perfect opportunity to get up close with these senior executives who will be able to tell us what is it that can help our startups pitch better to their companies and secure businesses. My goal is to keep this session interactive. So I will start with a few questions so that we get the conversation going. However, I really hope that we can ask intelligent questions and get real value for your own questions or situations from these very illustrious people. Is that fair? Are we all okay? Need to stand up one more time? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, there was an old adage which said that nobody got fired for buying IBM. So we know that at very large corporations, large companies, large enterprise, large players in the enterprise space have a reasonably good access and are able to sell their wares to the CIOs or to the large corporations. But sometimes us as small companies have a challenge. So I want to start this question to both of you. We know that, for example, you have a very large deal with IBM, for example, like billions of dollars. And I'm sure you are doing things with very large corporations as well. But tell us a little bit about what your personal experiences have been in your various positions of authority of dealing with startups. And we'd like to hear about stories where things worked, but more importantly, where things did not work. Because I think where things worked, what we would like to take back is what are those things that we can imitate, something that we can learn. But those things that didn't work, and you had really horrible experiences, those are also the things that we would like to hear about. That way we can know what not to do when we are trying to enter into large corporates. So Harmeen, may I ask to get started?
So throughout my career, I've actually worked a lot with startups all around the world. In fact, at Bank of America, I used to do an event every year in Silicon Valley whereby we used to bring the best known startups for a 2-day event. I used to take all my investment bankers there. And it was really for us to see which companies we want to deal with, and equally for us to see which are the companies we want to advise our investors, from the investment banking arm and the corporate banking arm to invest in. And Bank of America itself also did a lot of investments. And it used to be a historic event, one time a year, and I got to be, the true technologist in me would come out and be uninhibited, and it was a fantastic time. And I think that association from several years has never broken off. I was just telling somebody literally 3 weeks ago as well, I was back in the Valley meeting a lot of the guys and seeing what they're innovating on. I think as CIOs, we just have to strike the right balance, where to bring in a giant and where to bring in a startup. From what you were saying earlier, that Airtel has a very long-standing relationship with IBM, absolutely. They are our technology partner. And we have a large deal with them, but it's, we changed, after I joined, I changed the complete construct of that deal, which we did in April, and now it feels like ancient history. But the entire idea was to actually make room for, it's no longer an exclusive deal, it's no longer nowhere as close,
publicized quite a bit,
as large as it was, and the idea was to make a room for a lot of the innovation. As a person, I inherently believe that more innovation is coming from the startups and from the people in the room than necessarily from the IBMs, and we deal a lot with all of them, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, you name it. And I think that is the value that I want to bring to my shop. So I do an awful lot of work with people who are just coming up in startups and medium-sized organization, and it's more about what they can bring to the table. I'll give you a small example from an earlier part of my life. This is going back to 2000, year 2000. At HSBC, it was a small startup. I don't know if you guys have heard of this company called CxOs. provides financial services software. And at that point, Calypso was a 15-people company, and they came to HSBC and they wanted us to take a system which we had built over 18 years, gut it out and put Calypso in. And it's both, it's a dream and a nightmare story, so I guess it fits in very well. And it was one of the biggest bets of my early career, and I was the head of FX and money markets for them, and we decided to go ahead with this piece of technology. And HSBC is one of the largest FX players on planet Earth. Almost 7-8% of the world's foreign exchange crosses through their trading floors. So it was it was one of those moments that either from a CIO you become a group CIO, or from a CIO you get fired. There are only two outcomes possible. And it was a very painful 6 years, and probably the most successful 6 years as well. The whole project was about 3.5 years, but then they roll out across 46 countries, took a long time. But the entire story was taking that company, which had 15 people, and one of the largest banks in the world, deciding to use them for their core treasury platform. Half the world thought we were insane, the other thought we were brave, and the other part of the world was just quiet, saying, let's see where the chips fall. But it turned out to be, Calypso wouldn't have been cross their $1 billion and be as large as an organization as they are today if it weren't for that deal. And I think HSBC gained a lot as well. I personally sat with those guys and built half of the business flows, and we actually seconded. I sent some of my guys. What didn't work well was the scale was overwhelming, and we knew that. So to circumvent that, we employed a few people from my team, a few people from the business, sent them to California. They worked with them for almost 9 months building that product. And then those guys came back, and they led the largest streams of deploying and rolling out that product, and went on to make careers, both of them careers in Calypso within HSBC for almost 7-8 years, and then beyond that as well. And at the same time, what didn't work well is the project took about 1.5 years longer than it would have. And it was, I think, where one thing which is common amongst all startups is the passion that we can take on the world, and there's nothing on the planet Earth that we cannot do. And it's really the difference between confidence and an overconfidence, where sometimes we cross the line. And that's probably the biggest lesson, is knowing when to be able to do that or not. But at the same point, it's about getting that right break. You get the right break, and you get the right company to back you, and anything could be a $1 billion story. And it was, for Charles and Kishore, and it could be for anybody else.
Wonderful. No, this is a great example. We always hear about this early adopter customers, right? And so I just want to, before I get to Anil on this same question, so this is a very interesting thing, because as a CIO, you said you betted on that, right?
I was the chief architect at that time,
right.
But then I got to become the CIO, so
it
was a good bet.
Yep, great. So my question to you is, what motivates a large corporation to try out a startup?
See, I'll tell you what motivated me in that time. As the architect, everybody was coming to me with a solution which was, 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. And been there, done that, seen whether it's the SunGuards of the world or the Murexes of the world. And really, there was nothing, nobody had dared to do really anything different. They would call it different, but it would just be different as a word written on the tin rather than anything different underneath. Whereas this organization actually did something different. They built, for the first time, they brought the full concept of event-driven technology in a banking and a investment banking environment. And they created a very simple data model, and it was based on industry standards, and they built adapters with all the other software that you would buy. And basically what they did was they took a very simple concept, and as they grew, they did not diverge from that simplicity, and that became their USP. And it is a product that when they would present, every single person in IT would understand the event-driven technology and how it worked. And every single person in the business would be sitting nodding their heads because of the way they had architected the whole thing and the concept of putting dashboards together where a business user comes in, sees what he has to do. You know, if you're a settlements person, you see everything that you got to do in the morning. And it's prioritized automatically based on what is the urgency of that payment that has to go out today, etc. So it was all built around the flaws of all other products in the market, a completely different concept. So rather than, you know, any strength of any product, they take it for granted, and every flaw of every product, that's what they went out and made a strength of their own. And I think at that point, they actually originally started with trying to say we're going to cover all asset classes and we're going to cover everything. And that was a mistake. And in the end, they did realize that we'll go and pick three, and it's better to be master of these three than just a jack of all of the others. And I think that strategy for both the co-founders worked immensely well. And it worked really well for me because the asset classes they picked were the ones that I was responsible for.
So when large companies like financial institutions,
Yep.
We know that they're really, really good in risk assessment and risk management. So what risks did you foresee when you were getting into this, and how did you kind of address those, mitigate those?
So the worst risk is the company goes bankrupt, and we've put a lot of that. So there was a lot of mitigation done on that, scenarios in the legal contracts that if that were to happen, we would take over everything that they had. I mean, from a software perspective, etc.
Source code and stuff like that.
Yes, and even for some of the areas, the IP rights, but that was a different arrangement only because we had helped build a large part of the software as well. But if they continued, then there was an exclusivity clause for a period of time. And beyond that, we became, I think, for as long as I was at HSBC was the largest reference for Calypso around the world and still is. But now it's in, I think, 200 banks or some ridiculous number like that. So
yeah, absolutely. The importance of first customer is immense. And many times in retrospect, after 200 customers, they may not give that much credit, but we all know, right?
That's actually the beauty of that thing was they always remember that.
They did great. That's wonderful.
And I worked with them once again. Since then, it was as much of a success story as the first time, probably even better. But it was. I think it's more about. It's more about taking the right idea that you as a CIO see and letting it grow and investing in it and actually. And it only happens when you're trying to do something where you want to be a pioneer in the industry. If you're trying to do something which is business as usual, which is run-of-the-mill, you actually don't want to go and take a chance on that.
Got it.
It's only when you are looking to do something different that nobody's succeeded at doing before, that's where you take the big bets.
Got it. No, that's wonderful. Anil, I know that you have stories, and we love to hear from you now.
So I guess some bit, a lot of it Harmeen's already covered. So I'll just share it from a bank's perspective. Banks typically, to use some cliches, there are systems of records where you're doing your core accounting, debit, credit, and stuff like that. That I would say largely are perhaps not a space that startup would want to go into, or even if you want to go into, the bank won't quite even bother talking to you about it. And then I would go down the spectrum to systems of engagements and systems of insight. And that's where I think the play is today. It is actually a myth that large enterprises don't engage with startups. Of course, if it's really a startup in the sense that you just started with a garage and a desk, then perhaps yes, maybe a little too early. But once you're a young company with something tangible, ready and about, companies, I can talk about our example, and we have done work with 3 very, very young companies. And all three have become, large, blossomed into large trees from young saplings, if I may use the expression. I don't know if they're giant oaks already, but at least they are successful. And the point that's already been made is that how do you get your first marquee customer, and how do you get? And I think that's really the crux of it. So the way you would, in my view, get to bank, of course, is that you need to engage with a few quote unquote friendlies who are at least looking to new ideas. There has to be something in it for me. So if you come to me in outside of the system of record kind of space, think about it from my perspective. Why would I engage with a startup? Right? It has to be, number one, perhaps you can do something faster than quote unquote large IT companies of the world can help me do. Which should be, it's logical, because young, you're small, and you can move much faster than a large organization can be. An easy one actually is Reserve Bank of India. Right? So anybody who wants to deal with banks should understand that a lot of stuff that the banks do comes down as mandates from Reserve Bank of India. And Reserve Bank of India puts whatever they want to put, they put it as a draft document on their website. And then once they get their feedback from everybody, they put it as a formal circular. It's all in the public domain, right? And if you are early enough to see, what's coming in the draft, you will get a good sense of what's coming down 2-3 months down the road as guidelines. And from the draft to guideline, there may be minor changes, but not much. So that's a great one. So when I said one is coming back to what should it be? Compliance, right? If there is something that the Reserve Bank wants, there's a timeline, I'm going to get to it. And if a startup can get me there faster and cheaper, then obviously from my point of view it makes sense. And I'm talking a real life example. There was very specific, unfortunately I can't take names, I shouldn't be taking names, but that's where a startup got a great opportunity, because there was a whole requirement for Reserve Bank of India. And he said, listen, this is something we can take the plunge. The diligence looked good. So the third thing, of course, is whether, good old, from a bank's perspective, what does it do for me that the existing player can't do, the existing solution can't do? And it has to be in the realm of, cost reduction and revenue increase and all the good stuff there. Contrary to what people always believe, bulk of any large enterprises spend, right, I would say 90-95% of the spend is not in the quote unquote fun zone. So don't ignore that good old bread and butter, day-to-day stuff, which the banks like us spend a lot of money, use the expression keeping the lights on, and there is an opportunity significantly to do transformation, to do a different play altogether. The other space is, of course, what I would call the fun stuff, which is, how do we get, better acquisition going? How do I increase my, customer acquisition, retention in the digital space? We all know that channels of acquisitions are changing. Right? How do we do something different for, Gen X, Gen Y, which traditionally the banks have not been doing, and we've been all learning from a lot of young people, young companies. So people like my profile have to learn from people my son's profile, right? This is the first time that's kind of happening. Till a few years back, I don't think a 20-year-old had much to teach me, right? I would have thought of maybe out of arrogance. But now, out of humility, I accept that, a 20-year-old has a lot to teach me. The world order is changing. So there is the entire spectrum. When you deal with a large company, one must be prepared that what you go with and what finally the company will buy from you may look quite different. And in that process of dealing with an enterprise, you may get tired out. Tired out by starting with documentation and agreement. So if you come to me, I will give you my agreement, master agreement to sign. If you're not ready to do that, I won't have the time, energy to go with yours. So you will have to be flexible. Now, should you be flexible with your second, third, fourth, fifth marquee customer? Perhaps not. But the first one, you got to be. There isn't a choice because you need that reference. Now, I can tell you, if you were to get a reference as an HDFC bank in the banking space, not just for you, but even for IBMs and VMwares and Oracle, the sale into the rest of the industry becomes a pretty much a shoe-in. So, so it is the flexibility, the speed, in terms of cost. Now, if you have to get your first marquee customer, my advice to you would be, go with a very low cost proposition, not because your product is bad, because for me, if it's expensive deal, it's a complicated evaluation process. Then I have the structure about supplier risk management, how do I handle that and commit a lot of stuff. So if it's a low risk for me, at least to get to a good solid proof of concept, to get to see early results, and I don't have to go past all this evaluation process, then I would be very willing to say, listen, let's go with this, let's try them out. It isn't too much onerous for me, doesn't cost me too much money, see if it works, right? At the same time, don't give it free. So if you give it for free, then you will see that the enterprise may not do the right amount of engagement with you, and your project will fail because not because your what you have done is not good, but because the organization, large organization, has not taken the effort to imbibe it and implement it. So I'll pause for now, and then I'll take some on rebound.
Thank you, thank you. No, this is very, very interesting. Now, I just want to quickly ask the audience, how many of you have attempted to sell to very large corporations such as Airtel? How many of you think that it is an excessively difficult process, or it's okay? How about you? So this is a challenge actually we say as startup. It's actually quite hard to penetrate this. Any tips, Anil, that you would like to share with?
Yeah, first of all, I couldn't disagree with it. I agree, it's very hard. And if you were to enter into an organization from, let's say, somebody who's in my IT department, chances are that even if that person supports your idea, by the time he can take it up past our, the entire hierarchy, it may just get dissipated around. So if you want to get a new idea, a startup kind of idea, I think you have to start with somebody reasonably senior in the organization. Right? You have to find somebody who really gets excited and who has the power to champion your construct, and then has the decision-making authority to say, listen, okay, I will do this, and because I can do it, then it will get done. Otherwise, it is difficult, no doubt about it.
How easy it is to get to Airtel?
So startups have sold me ideas in a toilet, in an aeroplane, on a holiday in a bar. I went paragliding once, and I ended up buying a product by the time I came back.
So we need
and
to
of course in my office. So
we also need to know the social itinerary of.
No, I don't think it. Well, I would like to believe that they weren't stalking me. But I think it's. I think a little bit is
Yes.
catching the right person at the right time.
Yes.
And when you're going to the washroom, you're, not. Your guards are definitely down. So somebody approaches you, generally do accept that with a smile. But I think it has been, and when you're in an aircraft and somebody's sitting next to you, I mean, you are as trapped in that seat for a few hours as they are.
Absolutely.
But I think it's a little bit is about catching the right person at the right level at the right time. Part of it is, I think it's company cultures as well. I mean, Airtel, let's face it, I wouldn't say we were a startup, but we've grown up from being a very, very small entity, and in a first generation entrepreneur to, a $17 billion company. So it's in our DNA.
DNA,
So we embrace it, we encourage it. I actually run 2 large units within my organization like a startup. In fact, completely, they are a startup. They have the same I have a shop that does a lot of my mobile development, etc. We call it the Agile Labs, and I have no hierarchy. It's a large team. There is zero hierarchy. It's any senior developer stands up and says, I'm going to be the lead on this product. He could be lead on a product, on product A. He's a developer on product B. He's just a consultant on product C. And they all sit together in a very entrepreneurial setup. There is no hierarchy. There is no bureaucracy. It's paperless. They don't use any paper. Everything is electronic. Everything is digital. And there is never an idea that's never discussed. It's not possible. Every idea, good, bad, ugly, is talked about once before it's tossed away. It's a very different culture. And it takes time and effort to find the right kind of people to source an organization like that. But, I think, and for me, because I've been doing this for so many years, it comes a little naturally.
Thank you.
So I do normally listen.
I'd like to make one more point. It's quite often when you deal with large enterprises, your specific solution isn't what an enterprise actually buys. The enterprise may be buying a larger solution where your little piece fits into that. It will be very hard for an enterprise to say, listen, I will take your piece and change it as part of this. You may be better off suited to work with the partner of ours who's putting the large solution and then fix the little piece that is relevant to your construct. So I was just, I arrived here only a couple of hours back, and somebody was just in the corridor talking to me about they do some seemingly wonderful play in compressing images, right, without loss of fidelity. I haven't, this is just a 3-second corridor conversation. Now, I actually don't buy image compression technology directly. I mean, it's there in many places. So if you were to come to me, I would say, listen, this is where I think it is there in the following 2-3 solutions. I can put you in touch with so and so, but you got to stitch your solution as part of their solution because I am buying a larger piece.
Right, right. No, this is really a good insight. Many times, if we have point solutions which have smaller technologies, and from your perspective, you are actually looking at a larger solution. And the advice that I am hearing from you is that see if it can, it can be part of the larger solution that you're buying. I guess that does two things, Anil. One is that from your point of view, you are actually not having to deal with a lot of people, and you can, these are all under the bonnet, so to say, of your larger system integrator or something like that, right? And also the onus probably of putting the whole integration piece together also is given off to that vendor. So that actually might explain. I don't want to be asking all the questions. So if anybody has any questions, by all means put your hand up. Okay, so we get started right away. Yes? Just one sec, there's a microphone.
As a startup approaching the companies like Airtel or HDFC for selling a unique product to companies, and what is the percentage of your decision on make or buy? I mean, make with your internal team or buy from an outside product?
We do mostly buy. There is relatively definitely less than 50% that we make ourselves. Of course, we integrate all this, and everything has the plumbing, everything works, talks to each other. So, but the basic solutions we buy.
So I have a question related to what you said. I found this idea of Bank of America instance that you mentioned, wherein you actually do a startup event and invite, depending on what technologies you are looking for and what they have, and bring them and kind of do like almost like a showcasing kind of thing. Are those kind of ideas happening in the corporate workplace today here?
We're actually thinking of doing an event at some point within probably maybe within the next quarter itself.
Okay, okay.
It's something I'm toying with, but I attend a lot of startup councils. I did the Intech 50. That was 3 days after I had just landed back in India. So, and then 3 or 4 others, and this is probably my 5th event in the year. And I think it's, but there's something that we're thinking of doing within Airtel as well, is just finding the right time. There's a lot going on in our shop at the moment.
Anil, I have a, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I had another question, which was, as product companies, we are very excited about having the first customer. We're also scared as well, because you just mentioned about the need for flexibility and being able to, modify or, suit the product. So many of product companies actually end up having such a murky large customer and then becoming a project shop, if you will. So their own product direction, their own product strategy totally becomes subservient to what the first or the large or the murky customers want them to do. So how do you guard against something like this, and what are your thoughts on that, if you can quickly thought?
So, to be very honest, you should be scared, and rightly so, because whatever is your core product that you created, even if you don't, modify the core, but the very fact that people in large organizations are used to doing things in a certain way, right? And it has to integrate with the other systems. There has to be stuff on the perimeter or periphery of your core capability that needs to be changed. And there is no product company, to my knowledge, right, who has sold anything to a large enterprise as a ISV solution where you don't continue to invest and need a project team to support that. There isn't any. So any ISV solution, whether it's our core banking, retail asset, credit card, whatever, there is a product and there is a continuing support. And there are streams where you will have to have a set of people dedicated to supporting our variants or the work around the core periphery.
The thing that sometimes happens is that customers tell you to customize product, and then it's customized. So we've got 20 customers with 20 versions of your product, which actually defeats the whole purpose of having a product itself, right? So
the only solution around that I can see is that you set up roadmaps to say, listen, I will take your ideas and I'll put this in a 6-month, 12-month roadmap, depending on how many customers want it, and so on and so forth. But to believe that you will not customize anything for a large corporate, I don't think will happen. It's not going to work.
Realistic.
So you got to be ready with it. You got to plan for it. You got to capacitize for it. And if you are from a intellectual thought process and purity, you don't want to do it. You want to be a Microsoft Windows or Microsoft Office, right? They're not customizing Office to anybody. So you can choose to be that, but I don't know whether you will necessarily be very successful with large enterprises going with that approach.
This discussion can continue for a long time, and I'm sure we have lots of things that we can ask. But we have a limitation on time, and I've just been getting signals that we should be closing this session. But both Harmeen and Anil are going to be around. We can definitely catch hold of them. They've just come today for this session, flew in the morning, braved the traffic, and are going back this afternoon. So whatever time they can spend with you, I'm sure they will love to talk to you. So please reach out to them. Even after this session, we have to formally close, because I think Ramesh has the next session that he has to get started with, and he's already here. So I'd like to thank both of you for being here. The fact that you are here means a lot to the community. And I'm sure we are not going to get every piece of knowledge that we want to get from you in this short period of time. But the fact that you have talked about your successes, how you in your previous lives have created startups from nothing to what they have reached today, that gives us a good confidence that for a startup, there is hope. There is a hope to get large customers on board and also grow with those customers. We also talked about some risks in doing this thing, and what I'm really encouraged about is the fact that something like what you want to do in Airtel is to create a showcase where you target certain technologies that you think you want, and ask people to come and pitch.
Yep.
So I think NASSCOM can play a good role there, where
Right.
I could specify, if you create a forum, I could tell you that I'm looking for something creative, innovative in this space. And I'll define it with a reasonably precise boundary without being too constrictive and then too vague either. And then if you could disseminate that across to all the companies who
that'd be
are
wonderful.
NASSCOM,
Absolutely.
and we come back say, okay,
this is
25
really-
companies are interested.
Excellent. I think we should applaud this this thought. I mean, nothing like getting from the horse's mouth insight into what they're looking for, right? I mean, we crave for such things. So please do help us with that. And thank you very much.